So hello and welcome to another episode of the Impact Room. I'm Holly Beeston, the Utilities Practice Lead here at Douglas Jackson, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Pip Tomson, presenter and journalist who you may have seen on ITV's Good Morning Britain and GB News. Welcome, Pip.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Pip, we decided to have a conversation today around a topic that is very close to both of our hearts, around imposter syndrome. So, do you want to, I suppose, tell me a little bit more about your experiences with imposter syndrome?
I think imposter syndrome has probably dogged my life ever since I became an adult and sort of entered into the world of work and
Mm,
was pursuing my career. My industry, the broadcasting industry, the broadcast world is, yes, it's competitive like so many industries. It's also pretty brutal, and I think most of us who work within it, whether we admit it or not, are very, very insecure souls underneath. Um, so really, for somebody who is afflicted for this, it probably wasn't the best medium for me to go into. I remember my mum would
mhm,
say to me, she thought I'd make a great social worker. Um, but pursued it, I did, and I think it was always a case of, if I achieved a modicum of success, and that could be presenting my first ever television news bulletin when I worked at
mm,
Central News in Birmingham. That, in my mind, would not be because I was good enough to do it. It was because I was lucky, and the person who did it that day was off sick, and there was no one else to do it. So they asked me, instead of immediately thinking, hell yeah, I'm a good communicator. I've got a a good broadcast voice. Why the heck can't I do this? Absolutely, I should be given the opportunity.
Why
And it's
wouldn't they
that,
want me?
yeah, but it's that mindset that then becomes a habit, and you do it without being conscious that you're doing it.
And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's a habit,
Mm,
and it's something that we almost program ourselves to believe then, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, and then you go through the feelings of, oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. How amazing that I got asked to do it. Instead of thinking, damn, yes, I absolutely deserve this because I've worked super hard to get myself into this position where those opportunities should come my way because
Mm,
I'm good at what I do.
absolutely. And I think all of these thoughts that we have, and I suppose these monologues that we have with ourselves, can cause a new belief system almost, can't it? So I suppose how have you managed with how have you managed and overcome that imposter syndrome during your career? Because you've catapulted around some of the biggest sort of broadcast businesses
Mm.
during your career. So I suppose how have you managed that?
Well, I didn't really manage it, Holly, to be honest. I just, I, I was afflicted by it the whole way through. And I think what maybe has changed it, and I hate to say it, but I think it's just getting older and
Mm,
becoming more experienced and, yeah, just more mature, and maybe becoming a calmer person. I think I'm definitely more confident than I was in my 20s and early 30s. And I'm definitely calmer. And I'm definitely now more of the attitude of, this is me. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I finally know what what I'm good at. And I'm happy to stand there and say that. And actually, if you don't like me or you don't want to employ me, that's absolutely fine. I'm not
mm,
everybody's cup of tea. But I've got the skills, and I've got a CV that is pretty full. And yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. and I'm starting to not just like myself, but I guess rate myself as well.
It's
But
important though,
it
isn't it?
takes a long time. It takes a long time, and I think every job I've got, there's been a feeling of, yeah, it's luck. Yeah, I'm tremendously grateful. And of course, yes, you are grateful to be given the opportunities, but I'm not thinking enough about the fact that I absolutely deserve to be there, and I absolutely deserve to have that role. And also, what goes on is every time you present a live news show, and I've done a lot of them over the years, but every time you went live on air, which is a tremendously exciting thing, and it's a great adrenaline rush, and I personally loved that challenge of having to think on my feet.
Mm.
But I also hated it because there would always be this sense of, today's show, I'm going to be found out. I'll get through it, but something will happen and I'll be found out. And that never went away. And there was always almost that feeling of you going into, an exam, like still at school doing your A levels, and you're walking into a 3-hour exam, which was a 3-hour news show that you're presenting. And it's
Mm.
just ridiculous when I look back, because every time I got through it, did a good job, sometimes did a great job, sometimes did a not so great job, but I was fine, and I was very able, and we never fell off air. There was never some massive cock up or drama or scandal surrounding me. It was fine. And some days it was absolutely great, and some days sometimes I'd present a show or do live broadcasts, and I'd get nominated for awards. And so
Brilliant.
all these things, the evidence sort of builds up and builds up to show you, it's like, isn't it? It's like being in a courtroom, and the weight of evidence against somebody. The weight of evidence was there to show me that I was very, very able and skilled at what I did. And yet I still didn't want to believe it. And I still
Mm.
thought, today's the day I'm going to come unstuck. And
And I
it's
think that's
crackers. When I look
really,
back now, it's crackers.
it is. I think it's really interesting actually how you talk about those thought processes, because even just reflecting on this recent holiday that I've been on with my 3-year-old, and there have been a few times when I've said to him, "Are you okay with doing this? Are you happy? Like, do you need some help with something?" And he's like, "Mummy, I've got this." And it's that inner confidence. But
Yeah.
I think that is kind of case in point where you do manage to talk yourself out of a lot of things as well, don't you, at different points in your life? And
Mm,
actually, that's a learned behavior.
mm, yeah.
It's quite
Yeah, I think it is.
interesting.
And I think for me, I'm sure it did. They say everything goes back to childhood, and I'm sure it did. I think as a kid, I wasn't the most popular child. I never felt like I was good enough or popular enough or funny enough or pretty enough, all that crap. I went to a single-sex girls' school, which, as far as I was concerned, didn't really help, probably made it worse.
Mm.
Um, and so when I was 18, yeah, I did leave thinking I'm not good enough, and almost got to prove myself so much more than everybody else. And there was a general lack of confidence with me. I think I was quite an anxious child, um, anxious at school, not so much at home. At home, I
Mm.
was a confident kid, but at school, I wasn't. Um, and I remember my lack of confidence and just ability, and my own basic intelligence was such that I didn't think I was clever enough to sit A levels. Now, don't get me wrong. A levels might not be for everybody. We've all got different. There's different. What is intelligence? That's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. There are different levels of intelligence, different types of intelligence. Blah 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 blah. But for me, I did my GCSEs. I got excellent grades, there's no reason why I couldn't have gone and sat my A levels, but I'd got it in my head of no, I'm not intelligent enough to do them. And I remember sitting and having a conversation with my mum and being so stressed about it. And my mum was actually great, and she said, look, if you don't want to do your A levels, that's absolutely fine. There's lots of things that we can look into for you to do, other things that you can do at 16. But don't let it be the fact that you don't think you're able enough to do your A levels, because there are millions of people who've sat these exams ahead of you and have passed. So why wouldn't you?
Exactly. And it's that limiting belief, isn't it, that stops us?
Yeah.
And just going back to what you were saying earlier around that, I suppose that pressure that you put on yourself with every broadcast that was live, when you think about, there's lots of things that happen, aren't there, particularly in the broadcasting industry, when somebody slips up on air or something's still live and it's recorded and streamed out there before it can be sort of taken back. But do you think social media has heightened that for the industry?
Yes, in a word, because of course, you know, it gets clipped up on social media. It's always, the bit that's clipped up is always very specific, you know, often very, very biased. You know, it can be a 20-second part of an interview that in your mind wouldn't be the best part of the interview to clip up. And it's there for everybody to see. And to be honest, I'm actually, social media, you know, 10, 15 years ago was quite nice. It was quite a friendly space. But now I do it less and less and less, because I just think it's like a, I don't know, it's just a, it's a snake infested,
It's almost
sorry,
like a
shark
hunting
infested
ground, isn't it?
grass.
It's
Yeah. And I'm, you know, I see some comments that were made about me that on a very low level could be unpleasant. And I think, my God, people who get this day in, day out, you have to have a very strong sense of self to be able to deal with that.
very thick skin as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. But on the whole, I mean, there's different spaces on there. I mean, I find X pretty unpleasant. I don't like the you know, I don't engage with it that much anymore. I hate the way the algorithms work. You know, the way it's gone, X, I just don't like it. I find Instagram a friendly space, pleasant, but that's probably because most of the accounts I follow are dogs. Dogs and horses and Facebook's all right. Facebook's okay. I don't go on that.
That's limited to your
should,
friends, though, isn't it, really? So I think that's the difference, isn't it?
And acquaintances.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the number of Facebook friends you requests you get, and I'm thinking, why the hell am I going to be a friend with you? I have no idea who you are. And maybe we've got one mutual connection, but no.
Yeah. I don't know. So I suppose looking at, talking about the self-talk and the beliefs, how do you think you can change that to eradicate imposter syndrome, Pip?
Well, I mean, for me, and I can really only speak personally for me and what's helped me. I think there's several things that probably I've done over the years. One is talking it out to people who talking it out with people who don't have this problem. So, for example, if you're lucky enough to have a great relationship with a parent, you know, for me, I had a great relationship with my mum, who's very sort of straight talking, um, much more confident than me in many ways. So somebody who you can speak to about this, or going to see it, talk it out with a counsellor or a therapist, is always really helpful. Also, when you doubt yourself, write things down. Just write a list of what you believe your qualities are, your skills. you know, talk about skills, but it could also be your qualities, the fact that you're, you know, I don't know, a loyal person, an honest person, a brave person. And again, I've done this during very low periods where I've started making a list and there's about 3 things on it. And then it's needed other people around me to go, what about this? And what about that? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll add that as well. So that definitely helps, writing things, the process of writing something down and seeing that on paper is great. And also over the years for me, it has been challenging myself and putting myself in uncomfortable situations and embracing that challenge. So, for example, I climbed Kilimanjaro a few years ago. Now,
Amazing.
I don't like or never did like camping outdoors. I did the Duke of Edinburgh once at school. Well, I started doing it. I don't think I even got to the Bronze Award. The first night was camping in the school grounds, and I thought, nah, not having this. Don't like it. Do it. But then the opportunity randomly came about at some charity dinner for me to sign up to climb Kilimanjaro. And I thought, do you know what? This is out of my comfort zone. I'm going to do this. And I just, you know, cliche, yes, but I literally took it one step at a time. And I summited Kilimanjaro, which for me was a massive achievement. And it was tough. There was tears, happy tears, painful tears, you know, tears of exhaustion. There was everything. And it was a great team building exercise as well. But to actually do something like that really can increase your levels of confidence, because you know that you can take on whatever's thrown at you.
And I think,
and saying I'm not, like saying I can't do this. Well, you've proved to yourself. You've just climbed a bloody mountain, for God's sake. You can do this.
Absolutely.
You can climb those mountains in everyday life.
And I think as well, it's looking around you and also being more of the mindset that if you can achieve it, why can't I?
Yeah, which goes back to what I was saying about my exams.
Yeah.
And Mum saying to me, well, millions of people have passed A-levels before you. Why the hell would you not be able to?
It is that reframing, isn't it? And I think that environment that you surround yourself with and the people that you surround yourself with can either be the people that build you up and eradicate that imposter syndrome, or can be the ones that just fill you with the anxiety and the self-doubt and the questions as well.
Yeah. And also if you're surrounded by other people who, you know, might be very stressy, might be very unhappy people because they've got their own challenges in life. They might be very anxious people. I think as much as you can, you have to try and distance yourself from that as well, because that doesn't help you. And there was actually a very good visualization technique that somebody told me last year, which was, you know, those people who can impact you, whose levels of stress or whatever, it's such negative energy. So you visualize yourself putting on a big coat, you know, and a big long thick coat with a big long zipper down to your ankles, and you zip it up and you zip it up and you zip it up all the way over your nose up to your head, and that is your protective barrier from those individuals who
I'm going to utilize that one. That sounds like a great idea. Get the shield out.
Yeah, try it.
It's interesting though, isn't it, how just the smallest techniques, like you talk about writing things down that lift you back up, imagining your protective barriers, ultimately they are the things that enable you to shift your perception of yourself over time as well, and they're the things that ultimately influence change. And you talk about throwing yourself into lots of different things, because I know that when we've talked before, you're very passionate about your dogs, aren't you? And that's another area that you're sort of challenging yourself to do something different, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, dogs, pets, they can really help you as well because they center you
Mm.
and you don't ever have to think when you're with them about whether they're going to find you out,
No.
whether they're going to realize that you're in your mind a fraud, because all they're interested in is, are you going to walk me today? Am I going to get my food and my treats? Are you going to give me cuddles? And so actually they are such a great I mean, they say that, don't they? They are
Mm.
so good for being able to stay calm and be present. And that's the other thing I think related to imposter syndrome is you're spending too much time in your head worrying
Yeah.
about, you know, being found out, what people are thinking of you. Are those people going to unmask you? Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. When actually, if you can be more present and be more mindful, that will really help get on top of it. And with my dogs, they make me present and mindful, and I'm walking them, I'm just trying to appreciate the environment,
Mm.
the vision of them running through the fields, wagging their tails, happy, happy, happy. And also, it sounds, you try and be more dog because
Mm.
they live in the present. They don't worry that people are going to find them out or they're
They
going
don't
to
worry
cock up.
about what's going to happen tomorrow or what happened
No,
yesterday.
no,
It's like when you say
no.
that they do
And
something wrong and sorry, I was just going to
every
say it's like,
day, my
oh, I think we've got a delay.
no, you carry on.
I was just going to say when they do something wrong, the next day they wake up and feel as though nothing ever happened and they don't act any differently, do they?
No, no. And I know one of my dogs, don't judge me, sleeps on my bed. And every morning for him, it's a new day and it's exciting.
Mm.
And what's today going to bring? Get up, Pip, wagging his tail, cannot wait to run downstairs, grab his toys, get outside. And it's so lovely. And that cannot help but impact you in a good way.
Infectious.
Yes.
Interesting though, because it's those little things that when you actually think about them, they really do lift you up, don't they?
Yeah,
I,
absolutely. And that's the other thing is that, this is all a mental thing. And that means you're stuck in your head. You're not being present. You can end up, sitting there and just, you know, ruminating, catastrophizing. You have to get up and move. Get
mm,
up and move. Go for a walk. For me, walking my dogs, um, exercise in general helps. Um, and yeah, trying to be mindful, appreciating the small things. So your first cup of coffee
mm.
or your own cup of coffee, if you're being good, of the day, savor it. Nice hot shower, savor it. That's another thing actually that is a good one to do, is to do like a gratitude list. 5
Mm.
things every morning or before you go to sleep that you're grateful for.
I do them morning and night and have done
Oh,
for
good for
just
you.
over 18 months. But it's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's great, isn't
Be-
it?
Yeah, because they change. Some things remain consistent, and some things I do find myself copping out to utilize as a gratitude. But actually, it makes me, it, particularly at the end of the day, it will make me reflect on good things that have happened. And often I'll think to myself, well, what was the best part of your day? And obviously that helps as well, doesn't it? Especially when you're not having the best of days. But it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think there's loads of little techniques that you can do that will work better for you than others, but it's just a case of taking that time to be kind to yourself.
Definitely.
And you know, and also just accept it. You are going to have crap days, and just sit in it and know that it's not always going to be like that. And that what is it? The writer Matt Haig, who I think is brilliant. He's written books, a lot of books about mental health. Reasons to Stay Alive was a great one that he did. He's one of
Add
his
that to my
mantras is
list.
no storm lasts forever, because eventually they run out of energy.
Crazy. It's so right. It's just the simplest of things though, isn't it, when you contextualize it?
Mm.
So I think looking back then, Pip, if you could go back to the first time that you experienced imposter syndrome and give yourself a piece of advice, given that your confidence has grown and things are different now, what would that be?
You are good enough. I think it would be as simple as that.
Really powerful.
And also, do you. Do you. Don't ever try to emulate others or copy others. Be your own authentic self. And again, that's something that I've only become more comfortable with as I've got older. And it's only now, actually, in recent months that I've actually started to be really tough and think, right, I'm going to have boundaries here. And that can be, you know, with people. Yeah, I'm a lot more tough, and I've got more confidence to be able to do that, because before it was always thinking, you know, you want to be liked, you want to be popular, you want to be this. And actually I've just realized I shouldn't have to change to fulfill what people's view of me should be.
Because you end up making yourself unhappy.
Yeah, that sentence I said didn't make any sense. I shouldn't have to change to fulfill how I think others want me to be. I just have to be me. I just have to be me, and just be you and be authentic, because you are unique, you know. And I think it's important as well. We're two women chatting about this, but I think guys have an imposter syndrome as well.
Absolutely.
I don't know that
without a doubt.
talking about it, but I think they do. And it would be great to have sort of more conversations with them. But it's amazing that the stories that people tell once you start talking about this issue, and how it has, you know, it can really hold people up. It can really stop people from pursuing their ambitions because this.
And when I've experienced it, even recently, it's something that has stopped me making any significant change that will actually benefit me as well.
So when have you experienced it recently?
Lots of times, to be fair. I think you go on, just simple things like being invited to speak at networking events for the first time, and you think, why me? And actually you get there and you start to talk, and things sort of come naturally, and you start to talk about the area in which you have built your career, and people are engaged, asking questions, asking for your opinion, and you think, well, actually that's why they've asked me, because I do know what I'm talking about. But because it's just something that you've built up over time yourself, I think you don't necessarily have the confidence that you would be able to stand up and deliver something. But actually, when it becomes more conversational, which that event did, it gives you the confidence to say, actually, I do know what I'm, a little bit like you were saying, that I do know what I'm talking about. And there are pieces of authenticity, and actually by going and putting yourself in those situations, you meet new people, and then that brings more opportunity. And I think you don't get anywhere in your comfort zone, do you? You've got to get
No.
comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all struggle with that. And that's probably, you know, when I've sort of moved jobs over the years, that probably is because I've got in my comfort zone and I feel like I've got my slippers on, and I try to challenge myself. But it's interesting because with time I've kind of become more confident with the whole going and hosting an event. You know, I've done them. I'm not saying I don't get nervous before I do them, but I sort of get very much into work mode. And again, with experience, started to think, right, I'm going on that stage as Pip. This is me. I'm not going to pretend to be anybody else. And I'm just going to be, what you see is what you get. But if I have to walk into a room with a load of people that I don't know, say it's a networking event, I'm really terrified. I hate it. I hate it. But if you said to me, you've got to go on the stage and host that that's not a problem.
It's funny, isn't it, how the different types of engagement feel completely different as well. There are lots of people that I've not met in person, and then you meet them in person, and because you've spoken to them a lot over a period of time, it almost feels like you know them really well before you've even had that first physical interaction. I think that's another thing with how things are nowadays, but without being authentic. If you weren't authentic, sorry, and then you go and put yourself in that situation where you physically got to be around other individuals that have this idea of this sort of masked persona that you're pretending to be, if you're not being authentic, then like you say, that's when the being found out is. And I think that's maybe a little bit going back to what you're saying at the start, that fear of being found out sometimes is because actually, truthfully to yourself, have you been authentic with the way that you're delivering yourself? Potentially not, because you're trying to mold yourself to what you think others' expectations are of you. So maybe that is sort of full circle where the confidence has grown because you've become more confident in authentically being Pip.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And the other thing that as I've always needed, which again is because of this fear of being found out, and then needing that confirmation of you're not going to be found out, is I've always needed feedback. And I've doubted my own judgment. So, you know, I don't know, I might go out and filmed a piece in news, and we always would have post-program debriefs, and the editor would go through the running order, and I actually liked it. Some people hated these post-program debriefs. I actually quite enjoyed them, because I wanted to hear people's reflections of the show and what worked and what didn't. And so I wanted honesty, and I do like people being direct. But I would always crave that feedback in those meetings. Of course, if they said, Pip, that wasn't your best work, that was a bit like, you know, a bit of a
Providing it's
kick.
constructive, though.
Exactly. But the worst thing would be if nobody said anything.
And
And if nobody
then
said
you went and did
anything,
it again.
work was bad. It just means that it was fine, but there's other things we wanted to highlight because that definitely didn't work well. And that was actually brilliant because of X, X, and X. Whereas if it was fine, I hated it when my work didn't even get noticed. And then I would actually approach people afterwards and go, my piece this morning or my piece tonight, I didn't hear anything about it. Was it okay? And they're like, yeah, of course it was okay. And it might have been, they might say, oh God, yes, sorry, Pip, was rushing to another meeting, meant to mention that. So it wasn't because they purposely hadn't, because there was anything wrong with it. It could be
No.
things that were completely nothing to do with you.
And I think I don't know about you, Pip, and I don't want to speak for you, but I can be a serial overthinker too.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that,
I've always
I think that's
analysed.
where it becomes worse.
Yeah. No, I've always analysed. Far too analytical, worrying about stuff. You know, and I
That
had
hasn't
it the other
happened.
week. Yeah, always worrying about stuff that hasn't happened. Trying to cater for every eventuality. But again, I'm getting a lot better at that. But I had it the other week with somebody who's a friend who I'd contacted a couple of times, and I know this all goes back to my childhood, right? Being at school. But I'd WhatsApp this mate a couple of times, hadn't heard back from her. It was about meeting up or whatever. There'd be no dramas or anything. There was nothing, but because she hadn't replied to me when I'd messaged her a couple of times a few days apart, I was like, oh, what have I done? I must have done something.
And then you read back on the text messages and you think, oh,
well, it could be stupid things like, oh, maybe it was because, and I mean, this is just so crackers when I look back. Maybe it was because she posted a picture on Instagram and I didn't like it. Or I don't know.
have I
Just
forgotten something that's important going on in her life?
Yes.
And that's why
Yes.
yeah, those are
Yeah.
I'm exactly the
All
same.
those things. You start going through these things and you're thinking, am I going mad? I'm sure there's nothing that's happened here, but then why would she not reply to me? And then when you're being more sort of reasonable with yourself, you then start to think, well, hang on, Pip, you're totally overthinking this. You don't know what's going on in her life. And if she doesn't want to get back to you straight away, she's perfectly entitled not to get back to you straight away. But what you're thinking, you've got no evidence for. So maybe just assume that she could be really busy, or she could have been on holiday, or all this stuff. But I went through quite a few days of this, probably 2 weeks of this, before I thought, right, I'll send her a text. So then I dropped her a text, and I get a perfectly lovely text back. Oh, sorry, Pip, just had this going on, that going on, time runs away with you, blah, 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 blah. How are you fixed on whatever date for dinner? And how much time had this thought consumed me that I'd done something, that I was going to be found out for, not being the good person that sometimes I, that whole lack of confidence, it's all just a bit of a messy head at times.
Crackers, like you say. So I think looking at obviously the conversation that we've had, I think we've done quite a big sort of full loop around many elements of how imposter syndrome has sort of impacted you and how you've sort of overcome it. But I think sort of moving forwards, is there anything else that you're looking to further implement to help in the future?
I think I have to just keep practicing what I'm already doing.
Consistency is key.
Consistency is key, and not letting things slip. Like just while we've been talking here, I realised that I haven't done a gratitude list for quite a few days, and I need to get back into it because I'm missing doing that.
I've downloaded an app now that prompts me in the evening.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a great idea. So I think it is just, consistency, repetitiveness, that self-talk, that good self-talk, positive self-talk of I'm good enough. And the other thing, and women, I haven't, worked in business, but I imagine for women in business, it's probably quite hard going into those male-dominated environments, or it certainly will have been in over the decades. that feeling that you have to prove yourself more than the guys. What I do now, which again is a ridiculous visualization technique, but it works, is if ever I'm feeling slightly intimidated, it's not the right word, but I'm dealing with somebody who's quite powerful. It might be big boss or whoever. I just think of them sitting on the loo. It works.
I'd probably just start laughing.
It works. Just think of them on the toilet.
They do say that though, don't they? If you're up in front of a large crowd of people, to just imagine everybody naked and then you don't feel as exposed.
Yes. It's absolutely true. It really is true. And and I look back and I regret, letting myself be so such in some ways such a shrinking violet in front of people. I think generally I'm quite tough, and I had to be tough when I was a newspaper reporter in Wolverhampton. I worked in a big newsroom. It was mostly men. But I was one of the youngest people there. I started in newspapers when I was 18. So there was me, still, fairly young, dealing with a lot of, male news editors who were, a lot of them were quite sexist, set in their ways. And they tried to be, to dominate you, to bully you, to put you down. And very early on, I realised that I had to stand up for myself. But there's not that's not to say there aren't situations in other times of my life where I thought to myself, why did you behave like that? Why did you not politely annoy that individual even more, that boss? When why were you so scared of him that you were waiting for him to talk to you? Why didn't you just go in and have a conversation with him? Know your worth.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, know your worth.
Well, I really appreciate how candid you've been about all of your experiences, and I really appreciate you joining us, Pip, and for sharing your thoughts and all of the different mechanisms that you're using to overcome it as well. So thank you ever so much for taking the time out to share your insights with us.
Pleasure. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice, and hopefully I've given a bit there, but I think it's always so important to talk to somebody. Don't get stuck in your head, because that's a downward spiral.
The dangerous place to be.
People, yeah, and always know that there are people that you can talk to.
And actually, it's quite interesting, because when you start exploring those people to talk to about different things in different areas of your life, it's amazing how new relationships form and blossom as a result of that as well, isn't it?
Very true. Very
Through
true.
authenticity.
Yeah. Absolutely. And talking helps so much. I talked to a bunch of people a few weeks ago, and we did a whole Q&A on the floor, but then afterwards we were chatting, and there was this one lady who came over to me and she was talking to me about her own experience, and she didn't feel at the time sort of brave enough to put her hand up and talk in front of everybody else. So we just chatted one-on-one, and she started crying because she said it's just had been so therapeutic for her to be in a room in a safe space with people, talking and hearing other people's stories, and hearing people like me who, yeah, at first sight people would think, oh well, Pip's been on the telly and Pip's comes across as so confident. It's like, you have no idea what goes on in people's minds, because it is a powerful, scary thing.
And that's the thing, isn't it? And I think a little bit like what you were alluding to earlier, you don't know what's going on in somebody else's day. So just remember that.
Mm. Yeah, that is very true. Be kind. Another cliche.
So important though. They say it
But
about the
works.
swan, don't they? They look all graceful when they're gliding across the water, but their feet are going like
Oh,
crazy
that's me.
underneath.
Yeah, that's been me. That's been me. 5 minutes to on air where I've been thinking, oh crikey, this story's broken. I don't know enough about it. Well, of course I don't know loads about it. It's only broken 2 minutes ago, and I'm about to go on
Yeah.
air. Surface, I'm completely serene, and all hell's breaking loose around me. And I've got people I'm working with are getting stressed, and I'm thinking, right, remember, big coat, zip,
Mm,
and remember, you got this.
I love that. So authenticity, boundaries, confidence, visualization techniques, and gratitudes.
Mm.
It's a
Right,
starting
right on the
point.
put a note on your fridge that says, "I'm good enough."
Absolutely.
It works.
So yeah, thank you ever so much for joining us, Pip. Really appreciate all of your thoughts and insight and your tips and tricks as well. I'll be implementing a few more myself.
Pleasure. Well, I do hope it helps a few of you, and I'm still implementing them myself as well.
There's always an opportunity to improve, isn't there?
Absolutely.